Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So let's see if everything is in order, if my voice is fine. Eh, Yep, it's fine. So today we're going to be continuing with the Al-Maqsad al-Asna. And the last time we left off at Al-Alim, which means the knower or the omniscient. And so today we're gonna continue from there. We're not gonna do 5 days, 5 names today. We're gonna do 6 names because Imam al-Ghazali deals with all of these names in pairs. So wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hassan bhai, thank you for joining. So we're gonna do 6 names today. The reason we're gonna do 6 and not 5 is because Imam al-Ghazali does them uh, in pairs. So that's what we're gonna do. So without further ado, 5 of you are already over here, and if others wanna join, they can join as we move along. So let's just begin, inshallah. So let's just put this on full screen. Yeah. So the names of God. Now, one of the things that perpetually hurts the lovers of Imam al-Ghazali is that there are not a lot of portraits of him. So what we have to do is just use the ones that we have. You can see this one is a bit blurred out because you can do too much with editing. Perhaps I might just use some AI to maybe improve the portrait, but that seems very, let's say, dignified for the Imam. And like, Allah alam if that's even a proper way to think about it. But anyways, so again, we're starting with the Al-Maqsad al-Asna. Last time we left off with the name Al-Alim. And so today we're going to start with the 21st name up until the 26th name. And the next time we're gonna, next one is probably gonna be a long one because all of the other names after this, so not all of them, but especially Al Halim, right, the arbitrator, Imam Ghazali has a very long explanation of it. So probably the next time when we cover it, we're gonna dive into that explanation. So it goes into a lot of things like occasionalism, like different levels of understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being the judge and stuff like that. So that's just like more so of a trailer for you guys for the next one. But anyways, starting off over here. So the first 2 names we're gonna be covering is he who contracts and Al-Basit, he who expands. So you would realize that in most of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will cover more of them today as well, that if He is the one who expands things, then He is also the one who contracts things. So both of these things are affirmed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides, and He is also the one who compels. So He's Al-Jabbar. We have already covered the name Al-Jabbar. So both of these things must be affirmed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it is only He who provides and it is only He who contracts. Right. So the way that we usually do it is that the entirety of this is like copy pasted. So I'm gonna tell you what Imam al-Ghazali says fully, and then we're gonna dive into its explanation. So Imam al-Ghazali says, he appropriates souls from dead bodies at death, meaning brings them out, and extends souls to body at quickening, gives them in. He also appropriates alms from the rich and extends sustenance to the weak. So he takes from the rich and gives to the weak. So contracts from the rich and expands on to the weak. He extends sustenance to the rich to the point where no need remains and hold it back from the poor until no strength is left. So he gives sustenance in the sense of riches to the rich when no need of their remains, meaning the only things that they are now sufficing with is wants, and he contracts it, withholds it from the poor until there is no strength left in the poor. So both of these things are from Allah. He contracts hearts and restricts them by what he discloses to them of his exaltation, majesty, and his lack of concern, while he expands them by what he makes available to them of his godliness, kindness, and beauty. So he contracts some hearts by not allowing them to see things of his godliness, his kindness, his beauty, his majesty, his knowing all of the different mysteries of the spiritual realm. And he also contracts from other individuals the knowing of his majesty, the knowing of his exaltation, the knowing of his being. So as we know, not everyone knows God, and even in knowing God, there are countless different stations of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this is by His will. He contracts that which He wants to contract, meaning He withholds that which He wishes to withhold, and He grants that which He wishes to grant, and He chooses individuals. And so Imam al-Ghazali actually talks about this in Dam al-Kibr wal-Ujab as well, from Ihya al-Ulumuddin, that it is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you goodness. So no one becomes deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy or blessing. So at no point are we deserving of it, because how would we become deserving of it? By doing actions, right? So that is the conventional understanding. So what would occur is that we do good deeds, and therefore by doing good deeds we become, let's say, inclined, or we become deserving of the mercy of Allah. But that's not actually what occurs, because good deeds are not done by us, they are done through us by Allah. So it is Allah who creates them. So Allah is the creator of the one who does good. Allah is the creator of the acts of good themselves, and Allah is the creator by the means in which they are done. So He is the creator of everything fully, as Allah said. Allah created you and all that you do. So every single thing, He's the creator. So at no point do we become deserving. So how can we become deserving on account of an act that Allah created, right? So it is by His will that He grants to whom He chooses. So both of these things can only be affirmed from Allah, for Allah, nobody else. So no one else is a person who can withhold anything. No one else is a person who can grant anything. Neither can He contract, neither can He expand, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously has already decreed expansion or contraction, right? So this is very basic. It applies to many of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question arises: how does a human being attain a share, or let's say an understanding, in these two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So then we move on to the counsel by Imam al-Ghazali. So man's share is in the wisdom of his speech. He reminds of blessings and wrath, both at their appropriate times. So man's share in the name, or let's say his understanding of the name, is that he uses hikmah, wisdom, in his speech. So by that, what is meant is that such a person, what he does is that if a person needs the reminding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath, then he reminds him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath. So this can occur to a person who has become so negligent in regards to his deeds that he believes that he would just simply be forgiven by Allah. So there are many individuals like this, and you would find that this is something that is particularly a disease amongst sinners. So many times what sinners would do is that they would do sins, and they would try to justify their performance of sins by saying, well, Allah will forgive me, He is the all merciful. So to such an individual, he must be reminded of the wrath of Allah, and not to hold wishful opinions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in a sense he is trying to like trick Allah, astaghfirullah, that, you know, Ya Allah, that I will just say on the day of judgment, Ya Allah, but you're the most merciful, so just forgive me, right? You're the forgiving, so just forgive me. Well, he would not be forgiven. He would probably, due to this action, be thrown into the hellfire. And so hence such a person needs to be reminded of the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can ruin him completely in this world and in the next. Similarly, a person who is so awestruck, a person who is so lowly by being reminded of the wrath of Allah all the time, that he becomes extremely scared of everything he does, and he cannot escape this feeling of being lowly. He cannot escape this feeling of thinking that none of his actions would be accepted. This is also a disease. So a person thinks not well of his Lord. So there is a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that everyone should have a good opinion of Allah. So having a good opinion of Allah includes that Allah will accept from you. This is having a good opinion of Allah. So this person must be reminded of the blessings of Allah, so that he attains hope in Allah. And hope by nature always outbalances fear, because if you are hopeful for something, even though you may also fear it, the hope mostly overpowers. But the hope should not be extreme. For it is, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that I am the most knowledgeable among you of Allah, and I am also the most fearful of Him. So knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala necessitates both fear and hope. So I've done actually I've done some writing on this. You can probably find it on my Twitter. I think I shared it on my Instagram as well. If you go to some of the highlights, you might find it over there. But so I will not dive into it a lot over here. But the point is that knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds a person of who Allah is. And since it reminds that everything else is lesser than Allah, so meaning that He can even destroy you without there being any difference to Him. And no matter how much you worship Him, He doesn't get bigger, so to speak. Let's say His exaltation doesn't increase. Even if the entirety of the world was to deny Him, He wouldn't be denied. If the entirety of the world was to accept Him, He wouldn't be accepted on their basis. He would be accepted simply because who He is, right? So knowledge imparts both fear and hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So man's share in both of these names, the expander and the contractor, or let's say the withholder and the grantor, is by them knowing when to say certain things to individuals. So they grant, meaning they grant the blessings of Allah in the sense of reminding of them when it is needed. For an individual, let's say, who's so lost in the wrath of Allah that he thinks none of him will be accepted. And they contract or they restrict and they withhold via the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person who has made up his mind that he will already be forgiven. Because piety requires a person doubt himself. So it requires that a person doubt that he be amongst those who are saved. So there's an authentic report from Umar radiallahu anh that he said that if I was told that there is no man that will enter paradise except one man, so there's only one man that will enter paradise, then I will hope that I am that man. So he would have hope that he is that man, even though it's just one man out of the entirety of creation. He would still hope that it's him. And similarly, if he was told that only one person from the entirety of creation would enter hellfire, he would fear that he is that man. So hope and fear must be balanced out. And what a man, so as we said, that Muslims are the middle nation, so you must be in middle. And the man who brings the Muslim to equilibrium is a man who shares or who understands these two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So moving forward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Hafid and He is al-Rafi, meaning, well, I did a typo over here, right? So He's exalted, and this is supposed to be the abaser, but I don't know what happened over here. Wait. So what we should do probably is expand this maybe. Yep. So my typo is taken out. Yes. So this makes sense now, right? So that typo is like egregious. I don't know how it even happened, to be honest, but I do apologize for it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the abaser and He is the exalter. So let me just to make sure that that is gone. Yeah. So to quote Imam al-Ghazali, he is the one who abases infidels and with damnation and raises up the faithful by salvation. He exalts his holy people by bringing them closer and abases his enemies by sending them far away. So the holy people refers obviously to the awliya, the prophets, the righteous individuals, and he abases his enemies. So an example of abasing his enemy is an example of Iblis, right? The devil. So the devil was once a worshipper, right? There are even narrations, even though they may be weak, but there are narrations that there is not a place in the entirety of creation that Iblis has not worshipped Allah before, like becoming Iblis, right? So, but he became an enemy of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abased him completely, meaning all of this rank that he had built up with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over the course of Allahu alam how long, it was finished by one of his actions. And so he became a clear enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that day. And hence all of his deeds were abased completely. And so this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Iblis to you is a clear enemy, so take him as an enemy, right? So continuing, and whoever elevates his vision above tangible and imagined things and his intention above blameworthy desires, God has raised him to the horizon of angels close to him. So an individual who transcends beyond the mere sensible perception and beyond his mere desires, so meaning he has perfected himself, he has elevated himself. So in essence, it is not he who has elevated himself, it is Allah who has elevated him. He has no ability to know of these things unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shines his light upon him. So this, when we say, that the knowledgeable people are in ranks above, let's say, the awam, and then these ranks are, they only are above the rank of people who have knowledge. These ranks are not attained by effort. Meaning, yes, there is some effort involved, obviously, but these are mercies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He exalts whomever He wishes to exalt, right? And so this is Allah granting them this. They have not attained anything by themselves, right? While whoever restricts his vision to tangible things and his aspiration to the passions the beasts share with him, God will reduce him to the lowest of ranks. So there's a saying in Pakistan, it's very famous. So the saying is that man can reach two levels. So the highest level that he can reach is to be the best of creation, in the sense that he is even higher than the angels. And the lowest level that he can reach is to reach below the beasts, meaning below the animals, the worst of creation. So both of these things are true. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can raise man up in ranks, so he can exalt him to the rank that is, for Imam al-Ghazali, that is the same as the angels that are close to him. Or he can abase him with the ranks that is of the beasts, so the lowest of the low. So the thing that distinguishes him is that if he is closer in his thinking and his actions and his essence to the angels, then he is the same as them in sense of his rank. But if he is closer to the beasts in sense of his passions and his actions and his perceptions, then he is the same rank as them. So the main difference over here is giving into desires. So I think we should probably go into this a bit. So since it will make you understand what Imam Ghazali means by this, because right now it sounds very vague. So what being with the beast means to give into desires. So the animals, when they want to itch, when they have an itch, they itch. When they want to eat, they eat. When they want to, let's say, consummate, they consummate. When they want to jump, they jump. So they have no control over their desires. So to a very small degree, some animals have some far-sightedness, but even that far-sightedness is only to fulfill a bigger desire than a smaller desire, right? So the only reason that they may withhold sometimes the beasts, meaning the animals, is so that they may fulfill a desire later on in more capacity, in essence, right? So that's the reason they do it. Or the harm from doing it is less. So they have they know this not via, let's say, understanding in the sense of human beings, but they know this via repeated experiences, right? So that is the extent of their knowing. And if a man from amongst us who just gives into desire completely and utterly, so if his body tells him to sleep, he sleeps. If his body tells him to eat, he eats. If his body tells him to be gluttonous, he becomes gluttonous. To be lustful, he becomes lustful. And all of these different actions, so meaning he has no control over himself, then such a man is no different from the beasts apart from in appearance. So his rank is utterly the same as the beasts. Now with the angels glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without effort. So it's not like an angel thinks, oh, I should glorify Allah, so therefore he glorifies him. No, no. It is something that comes natural to them, right? So they cannot disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's impossible for them to do so, in fact. And so they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala habitually, meaning it's not something that comes from foresight. They just do it habitually. So these are actually the level of dhikr as well. So inshallah, when we go to Imam al-Ghazali's chapter on the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will discuss this in more extent. But dhikr has three levels and it has a core. So the highest level of dhikr is to just remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without thinking about it. So you do not force yourself to do it. So the angels do not force themselves to remember Allah. Most of us force ourselves to remember Allah, right? So after the prayer, we sit, and if we want to do some dhikr, we force ourselves to do it rather than it just happening, right? So there is thought involved in it. So that's the rank of the angels. And in terms of desires, it's not that the angels are renouncing desires, they just have none of them, right? So they are in the middle path. So they are neither sleepy and they are neither aroused, right? So they are not in the sense of energetic or non-energetic. They are in the middle. They are in equilibrium. And so if a man transcends over the desires in the sense that it so totally that the desires do not even factor in his thought, then he has reached the maqam of the angels, right? And so he is like them because they are brought close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah has exalted him, whereas the man who is like the beast, Allah has abased him. So this is the meaning of the two names. So the counsel of man in this regard, wait, bro, what the hell? Why? Okay, I should probably. What? Okay, yeah, I can just do this. You learn new things every day, it seems. Sorry, guys, for. So I'm my uncle when it comes to technology, as you can clearly see. So, anyways, right. So the counsel of man is that man's share in this consists in exalting the truth and abasing falsehood by supporting those who are right and reproaching those who are wrong. So it's two things. So the first thing is that man needs to exalt that which is true. So this is why when we are in public, especially, so we are supposed to exalt that which is, bro, come on. Okay, now I think it's fine. So that this is why when we are supposed when we are in public, we are supposed to exalt that which is true. This is one of our primary functions. So we exalt God, we exalt the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we exalt basic truths about Islam, we exalt the pillars of Islam, and so on and so forth. We exalt the articles of faith, for example, right? We exalt the prophets. So all of this is exalting the truth. And our job is also to abase falsehood. So falsehood refers to many things. That can refer to like disbelief. It can refer to injustice. It can refer to a wrong opinion. It can refer to wrong actions. It can refer to anything that is falsehood, right? So or anything that stems from the root of falsehood. So when we exalt the truth and when we abase falsehood, then we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the exalted and being the abaser, right? And this is also by supporting those who are right and reproaching those who are wrong. So there is a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that one of the best acts of a man is a word of truth spoken against an unjust ruler, right? So even though, let's say, the ruler or whoever is in power is in a lot of power, meaning that he can destroy him, so to speak, he still speaks the word of truth and reproaches him when he is wrong. Similarly, it is by supporting those, whether they be a beggar, if they have uttered the truth. So there are many social experiments done on this. You can obviously watch them in your own time. That most of humanity is extremely weak, so it is called the herd mentality in essence. So everyone is more so in some capacity a sheep. So if they are herded in one way, they go one way. And so this is why actually media works. So the reason that media works so great at propagandizing is that they repeat a falsehood so many times that man by his very nature accepts it as true. So this is in essence what we need to fight against. We need to support the truth, even if we are the only one supporting it. And we need to reproach those who are wrong, even if we are the only one doing it. It does not matter if we are supported in one or the other, right? And if we do both of these things combined, then we understand the names of Allah being being the exalter and the abaser, right? So moving on to the next names, it is Al Muiz and Al Mudid, which means the honorer and the one who humbles. So Imam Al Ghazali says he is the one who gives dominion to whomever he wills and removes it from whomever he wills. True dominion consists in deliverance from the shame of need and the domination of passion and the disgrace of ignorance. So, true dominion in Imam Al Ghazali's understanding is to be free from the shame of need. So need does not mean in the conventional sense. So need means that a person begging and stuff like that, right? So he has none of his sustenance of life and he's in need of other individuals for other things. So it is removing him. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes him by this, then he has honored him. And also it is from the dominance of passion. So most of us are people of the desires, meaning that our passions dominate us. Our passions can be anything. It can be the passion to become popular. It can be the passion to become successful. So obviously, because popular and successful are both tied to the world in our conventional jargon. So successful is a person who has a lot of money, who has a lot of businesses and stuff like that. So it is tied to basic desires. And also with popularity, it is tied to self-ujab. So it is tied to ujab, and it is tied to kibr, so pride and self-admiration, right? And so these are the passions of the world. And so if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees someone from these passions, he has honored them. So this is by one ways that he honors a person. And another way is the disgrace of ignorance. So ignorance is a disgrace because knowledge is so exalted in Islam. If you were to read the Quran and if you were to read the Ahadith, knowledge is the best of virtues. Like without a doubt, knowledge is the best of virtues. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes someone from the disgrace of complete ignorance, because even faith, so even if a person becomes Muslim, he has gained knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of Islam and of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? Because the kalima invites you to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the only God, and it invites you to accept Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as the final messenger, right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, right? So that Muhammad is an abd and Rasul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is ilm. This is actually the foundation of ilm. So removing from the disgrace of ignorance can mean by guiding a person to Islam. It can also mean by guiding a person to different sciences, alum. So a faqih is guided to fiqh, like a mutaqallim is guided to qalam, and a muhaddis is guided to hadith, and so on and so forth, according to all of the alum. This also applies to the sciences. Of like in the modern conventional sense of sciences. So a person who's an astronomer is guided to that knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is removed from the disgrace of ignorance in that science. So this is one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honors creation. So the one from whose heart he removes the veil so that he can behold the beauty of his presence, and to whom he provides contentment so that he can thereby be freed from his creation, and whom he assists with power and support so that he can take charge of the dispositions of his own soul. He is one whom God honors and to whom God gives dominion immediately. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides contentment to someone, now this contentment is in the sense not contentment in worldly matters, right? So it is contentment that frees him from worldly matters. So he's content in whichever way it is. So as we say, Alhamdulillah la kulli hal, right? So praise be to Allah in all conditions. So that is what is meant by contentment over here. So that a person, no matter what condition he's going through, no matter what are, let's say, the waves of the sea at the time, that this person is still content, and this contentment is granted by faith, right? So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honoring him. And similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings his heart to such a capacity that it can withhold the beatific vision, which is looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. Now, most of the Sufis believe that it is also possible in the world. And so obviously the majority opinion is that the Prophet ﷺ actually saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the night journey. And so it is accepted the possibility that a wali can also see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is reported from some of the Salaf as well. But I will not dive into that conversation. So it's a tangent. But let's talk about it in terms of, let's say, the Akhirah. So in terms of the Akhirah, as it is said that the people of heaven will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removing the veil from their heart so that they can behold the beauty of his presence, right? So as I said, they look upon his countenance, meaning his wajh. So, and whom he assists with power and support so that he can take charge of the dispositions of his own soul. So this refers back to what we were talking about, which is a person takes control of his desires, and his desires do not take control of himself. So for Imam al-Ghazali, a person whose desires are in control of him is like the worst of creation, in essence, right? So he has turned it the opposite way. So the master has become the slave, and the slave has become the master. So your desires are supposed to be your slave, right? And you are supposed to be their master, but you have turned it upside down. So now the slave is the master, and and going on forth and forth. So the one that is supposed to be ruled over is the one that is ruled over. So it has turned the basic constitution of man upside down. And so this is what he means, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him and assists him with support and power so that he can rule over his soul. And this is what he means by taking charge of the dispositions of his own soul. So he is the one who God honors and to whom he gives dominion immediately. So he's the one who has been given dominion. So dominion over here, so Imam Ghazali has the analogy of the king. So man is the king and his kingdom is himself. So if he brings it into right accord, he has dominated over his kingdom and hence he has attained dominion over himself. So moving on, this is in terms of honoring. Now, in terms of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the second name, as you can see, is the one who humbles, al-mudil, right? So on this, we quote the Quranic verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, they, i.e., the hypocrites, will call to them, i.e., the believers, why are we not with you? Meaning we were with you, so why are we like going to hell and why are you not? So they will say, yes, but you afflicted yourselves and awaited misfortune for us and doubted, and wishful thinking deluded you until there came the command of Allah, and the deceiver, i.e., the Satan, deceived you concerning Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can humble individuals who think that they are the best of individuals. So, Abu Jahl, his name actually wasn't, so Abu Jahl is the name that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam named him. But he was actually called Abu Hakam, right? Abu al-Hakam, which means the father of wisdom. That was his name. But he was humbled that the opposite of it was something that he's remembered by. So most people do not even know that Abu Jahl is not his actual name. Abu Jahl is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called him, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afflicted this upon him, and he was misguided by the deceiver, meaning Iblis, and so now he is a mockery, right? So he was even so he was actually so proud that when he was killed, that a former slave, I believe, who was the companion who killed him, I forget the name, but the companion, like, he struck him down and he put his feet on top of his chest. And so even then he was so prideful that, bro, you're about to die, might as well repent. But what he said is that you've climbed atop a great thing. Yani, look at the pride, the kibr, right? That the person is dying and this is what he has. And so therefore he is Abu Jahl, right? So how can he claim wisdom when the only thing he advocates is complete and utter opposition to Haqq, right? To Islam. And so the people who have kibr, the people who have self-admiration, the people who have given into the lusts of the world and all of the different deceptions of the world, these are individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humbles. And He humbles by making sure that these people go to where they are going, meaning hellfire and humiliation and ignorance. So and these are the 6 names that we covered. So in terms of man's counsel for this, it's the same, that a man humbles those who need to be humbled. So this is by humbling enemies, this is by humbling people of falsehood, this is by humbling people of injustice, and a man exalts and brings forth those individuals and honors those individuals who deserve to be honored, who are people of knowledge, who are people of truth, and who are supporters of truth, and who do nothing but justice. So this is how man can understand these 2 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that, we reach an end. And so Al-Maqsad al-Asna, we have covered names 21 to 26. So inshallah, next time, I'll see, maybe we might cover, next time actually it's like Arba'in fi Sulutin, but next time in Al-Maqsad al-Asna, we might cover another 5 names or maybe 6. So, but one of the names, the arbitrator, Al-Halim, is a very long explanation by Imam al-Ghazali. So we will definitely dive into that entire explanation. So I will shorten it because it is very long. Well, not very long, it's like 3 pages, but most of these are like half a page. So 3 pages is a lot, right? Considering that the others of them are like half a page, right? So these are the 6 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we covered today. And next time we will next week we're going to go with Arba'in fi Sulutin. So if next week it's 22, right? So next week will be Ramadan, the 29th fast or the 29th night of Ramadan. So we will inshallah cover Arba'in fi Sulutin. I want to cover the Quran. So I think the next one is Hajj. So last time we left off at what? Last time we left off at Zakat, right? So no, or Siyam. No. Last time was Zakat. So then we're gonna cover. I believe we should cover the Quran. So since it's the last 10 days, so we would cover the Quran. And Imam Ghazali has a very beautiful exposition on the Quran. So what we will do next time is that we will cover the Quran. But as for now, the reading is done. So let me know if you guys have any questions, inshallah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm not good at Arabic, so I just know a little of it. So I know enough to get around. So I have a friend who is in Jordan, so he's an imam, meaning he leads the salah, an imam in that sense. And so he teaches me. So that's about it, right? And so he has taught me how to read basic things. So I can't read very good Arabic. So some of the classical Arabic, I can't read that, but I can read some basic Arabic, and so it helps me enough that if I have some issue, or let's say if I have some question regarding a translation, I can refer back to the original Arabic, right? So that's the extent of it. The brother has helped me a lot. But if you guys are looking to study Arabic, the best thing to do actually is not to go into the grammar. If you go into the grammar, you're not going to learn Arabic because the grammar is so daunting. It's extremely daunting. So what you have to do instead is just do conversational Arabic. So there's actually a very good course on this by Seeker's Guidance. So if you open Seeker's Guidance, they have a course from beginner to advanced level, and you should take that course. But take it on like 2x speed, because if you take it on 1x speed, it's very slow and you will probably get bored. So take it on 2x speed, and inshallah, if you stay vigilant with it, you should have some grasp of Arabic by the end of it. And like the thing with Arabic, it helps with us, like yani Pakistanis, is because Urdu is very similar to Arabic. But grammar is not easy for Arabic, brother. Grammar, like Arabic grammar, is mantiq, so it's an extremely logical language, extremely logical. So when you dive into it, you would realize, especially like when you're talking about how to derive root words, how to make words from root words and stuff like that. So the wazn, so what is the wazn of a specific word from which you derive the root, and so on and so forth. So it's very complicated in that sense. So, anyways, so in regards to the question of al-iqtisad fi al-ittikad, so I think we can do that. I would rather cover like kharida al-bahiyya first. So if we are gonna do like kalam, so the first thing that I would rather want to cover is kharida al-bahiyya, or maybe johara tawhid. Those are more layman friendly, let's say, introductions into Kalam, because Imam al-Ghazali's book is not complicated. So it's a very basic book, but still, I would rather that we cover something that is more basic if we're gonna do it. So, but maybe I might think about it. I think after this, especially, so if we are done with these two books, so if we get done with Al-Maqsad al-Asna and Arba'in fi Suluddin, inshallah, then I might consider like advancing on to certain books of Ihya al-Ulumuddin. So especially like Riyadat al-Nafs. So it should be over here somewhere. Yep, this one. So Riyadatan, wait, let me just pull it out. So if we are done with these two books, inshallah, then we will cover Riyadat and Nafs. And maybe in the future we might cover, let's say, Al-Iqtisad. But for Al-Iqtisad, like there are ulama who cover it. So it would be far better for a person who wants to cover Al-Iqtisad to go to the ulama. So I'm not an alim, I'm a reader myself. So it would be better for you to learn from them. So the reason that I am like talking about this is because this is like basic practical religion. It doesn't require an ijaza to talk about or even to teach. So yeah. So you had a question. Let's say on Ashri command theory, does Allah command something because it is good, or is it's something good because Allah commands it? So if something is good because Allah commands it, yes, the Shaira would say that. Yeah. So and they would say that if it leads to, let's say, a person saying that that good is subjective, or even the word arbitrary, they say, yeah, that's fine. We don't really care. So yes, the answer would be that would be a resounding. It is good because God commands it. Yes. Now, the way that this works is that the Ash'ari do not have any problem with the will, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's choices not following, let's say, some preset principle. Because for them, the attribute of will is a sufficient explanation of any cause or any choice made. So for the Ash'aris defined the attribute of will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, irada, as the ability to choose between options. So the ability to choose between options has been affirmed. So then any option that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses can be chosen. So for them, something is good because Allah commands it. And if that leads to, let's say, if a person says quote unquote, that leads to arbitrariness, even though we would not say that's a proper way to say it, but we would not haggle them on, let's say, semantics. We would say a better way to say it is that it leads to subjectiveness. So morality is subjective to Allah. There is no such thing as objective morality in that sense, yes. So that is the Ashari opinion. So just give you like an explanation on this. So I've actually covered this to some extent in my documentary on Abu Hassan al-Ashari. So they were, in essence, two groups. So there was a group called the Mu'tazila. So the Mu'tazila, actually, it's a name that we gave them. They called themselves Asbab al-Tawheed wal-Adl. Yeah, so the companions of oneness and justice. So that's what they called themselves. So they had a modern realist view. So they had a very like natural law theory kind of thing going on. So for them, well, not really natural law theory actually, but something close to it. So their view was, and I've covered it in some extent. So you should go to my documentary on Imam Abu Hassan al-Ashri. So I cover it more over there. So their view was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obligated to do that which is good for the creation in terms of their akhirah. So that was their view. So, but the view is untenable rationally, and it is also untenable scripturally, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says throughout the Quran that He does what He wills, right? And if you read the story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam, you would realize this very quickly, that the Quran is a very divine command theory type of text. So it is also very apparent in saying, we hear and we obey, right? So whatever the messenger gives you, take it, right? And Allah is not questioned about what He does. Instead, you will be questioned. And Imam Abu Hassan al-Ashri removed, so he showed an absurdity in this position. So he reduced the position of the Mu'tazila into an absurdity. So for example, how does a person attain the high ranks in paradise? So he attains it by doing good actions, right? So if a person who died as a child, right, if he says to those to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why am I not granted the high ranks? Then Allah will say, well, you didn't do those actions, right? So I looked after your best interest and I caused you to die as a child, so you may at least attain paradise, right? So according to almost everybody, a child is a person of paradise if he dies. So then the person who goes to hell can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, why didn't you cause me to die as a child to look after my best interest? So it reduces to an absurdity. So again, you should watch my video on Abu Hassan al-Ashri. I covered it more so over there, inshallah. So a good entry book in terms of like Ashri Kalam is Al-Kharida al-Bahiyya. So there's a very good translation of it. Actually, let's see if I can bring it up. There's a very good translation of it by a brother named Kharkoshi. So it's, the Keys to Unseen website. So I should actually bring that up, but let's see. So it's a very good sharh and a translation of Kharida al-Bahiyya, and that's something that I recommend as a start. So yeah, over here it is. I think I can probably show this. Wait, share screen. I should first remove the previous screen and then share the new one, right? Yeah. Yeah, now I can share the new screen. Don't give me tips, bro, on how to share my screen. Thank you very much. Yeah, so add to stage. This is the one that you should go for. So this is an abridged English commentary, Al-Kharida al-Bahiyya from Keys to Unseen. If you just search it up, Kharida al-Bahiyya, the first will come, the first the first link would come to this. So it's a short sharh, but it's very good. It covers the basic rational judgment, the existence of God, the attributes, causality, the attributes of meaning, so sifat and mana, what is impossible for Allah, what is possible for Allah, seeing Allah, prophethood, and revelation, and all of that. So it's a very good chart, and you should definitely give this a read if you are new to Ashri theology. Yes. So for the Ashaira, Adal means, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be unjust. It's impossible. So the reason that it is impossible is that, for example, let's take this ring. So I have a ring. I usually give this example. Don't do like evil eye on my ring. But anyways, so this is my ring, right? So let's say I burn this ring, I throw it away. So let's say I just throw it away right now across the room. Would you say that I have been unjust? No, because I own the ring, right? So similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns us. He owns everything literally. We are not even owners figuratively. So if our figurative owner of this ring, by being a figurative owner of this ring, if it grants me the ability to do with it whatever so it pleases, and it allows me to be just with it because I own it. So how can the literal ownership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in regards to his creatures not entitle him to do with them as he pleases? So that is how the Ash'ara would answer such a question. They would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns you, he can do with you whatever so he wills. So actually this is in the Quran. So let me just bring up the verse of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. Just give me a moment. So it is, wait, why do they just pop up now? The ads on like the internet have just gone crazy, bro. Every single second they give you an ad. So it is Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 17. Allah says, indeed, those who say Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary, have fallen into disbelief. Say, O Prophet, who has the power to prevent Allah if he chose to destroy the Messiah, son of Mary, his mother, and everyone in the world altogether? To Allah alone belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth and everything in between. He creates whatever he wills, and Allah is the most capable of everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself answers that. Yeah, actually, so so obviously, like this is a very expansive topic, so I can't explain it like in a live stream. But there is a difference between saying that you can know some moral truths, aqlan. So actually, many of the Ashara wouldn't have a problem with this. So you can know that something is good and bad aqlan, just like you can know that Allah exists aqlan, right? So, but that does not entail that they are intrinsically good or bad. So the obligation upon something comes only by revelation. So you may, for example, know that by reason that something like murder is wrong, for example, or something like disbelief is wrong, something like falsehood is wrong, right? So you may know that rationally, but to follow it or for you to be held accountable upon it, it must be confirmed by revelation. So it is not intrinsically good or bad. The thing that occurs with aql and knowing of it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you by his mercy to perceive some of his commandments through knowing of his word, right? Just like he allows you to perceive his existence by knowing of his word, as he said that the world and everything in it is assigned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is how like knowing things rationally in terms of good and bad works. So for both the Asharis and Maturidis, it does not entail an intrinsic goodness or badness. The only thing it entails that is God has been merciful upon a person to allow him to perceive some of his commands through knowing of his word, right? So there's actually a very good podcast, I should say, on by Shams Tamiz on this. So you should find it. What's the name of the institute? The Khairabadi Institute. Yes. So if you go to the Khairabadi Institute, there's a video called "Who Are the Maturidis?" That's the title of the video. He covers the moral dispute there. So I actually take Imam Subki's argument. So Imam Subki's position that on this particular point, there is no difference between the Ash'aris and Maturidis apart from like lafzi, apart from a semantical difference. So that's the view I take. So I do not take the view that all differences are semantical, but this difference is semantical in my own view. So it's only about like semantics and honesty in my own view. So now in terms of this, now this is completely false. The Mu'tazila were not tolerant whatsoever. So the Mu'tazila actually were closer to the Khawarij than they were to what you would call like moderate Islam or whatsoever name you wanna call it. So the Mu'tazila believe that a person who commits major infraction, so a person who does major sin like killing, like alcohol drinking, like zina and stuff like that, so this person ceases to be a Muslim. So he is no longer a Muslim. Now, he doesn't become a kafir, like the Khawarij said, but this person goes into an intermediate position, so in a middle position. If they call it al-bayna manzila al-baynatain, something like this. So it's called the middle position. What was it called? Al-bayna manzila al-bayna manzilatain. Yeah, something like this in Arabic. So this person is neither a Muslim nor a kafir, right? And so what occurs to this person is that if he were to repent, then this person would become a Muslim again. But if he were not to repent and he dies without doing repentance, then this person goes to hellfire eternally. So this was their view. And in regards to major infractions and in regards to sin, they were actually far more harsher than, let's say, the Ashaira or let's say the legal schools, because the Sunni schools allow ikhtilaf. So let's take the beard, for example. So if I believe that shaving off of the beard is not haram, so that's the view of the Shafis, right? So they say it's makruh, but it's not haram. So let's say a Mu'tazili has an opinion that shaving off the beard is haram. Then he would actually enforce this belief, even if there is some difference of opinion, because for him, his morality comes from rationality. So once in his mind, if he has proven something to be rationally wrong, then there is no doubt whatsoever regarding it, and it must be enforced. So anyone who knows the Mu'tazila knows that they were not liberal in any capacity, right? So if you read their books, so one of their biggest scholars was Qadi Abdul Jabbar. He wrote a book called Sharul Asul al-Khamsa. So if you read that book, they are far more extreme in punishments than, let's say, the Shafis, the Hanafis. So those were the two main schools, right? The main schools were at that time were the Malikis and the Hanafis, and the Shafis were just coming up in essence. And the way that Mu'tazili thought and Mu'tazili doctrine was enforced was through the state. So they literally killed people. So the createdness of the Quran was a doctrine that they enforced by the Abbasid state. Actually, you should watch two of my documentaries on this. So firstly, in regard to the Mu'tazili history, you should read my documentary, not read, but you should watch my documentary on Imam Shafi'i. And in regards to the second, in regards to their beliefs, you should watch my documentary on Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. So I covered the Mu'tazila to a large capacity over there. But the Mu'tazila were an enforced religion, not, well, they are Muslims, but they were an enforced ideology upon the Muslims. So the student, so everyone knows what happened to Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, but that's actually not even the worst what occurred. So the greatest student of Imam Shafi was actually a person named al-Buwaiti. So Imam al-Buwaiti. He was killed by the Mu'tazila because he refused to affirm the createdness doctrine. Similarly, in the mosques of Fustat, so a book that I recommend for a person to understand how absolutely bonkers the Mu'tazila were in their extremism, it's a book by Ahmad al-Shamsi. It's called The Canonization of Islamic Law. Canonization of Islamic Law by Ahmad al-Shamsi. So he goes through all of these and he provides sources for all of this, right? So for them, they actually inscribed upon the mosques in Fustat that praise be to Allah, the creator of the Quran, right? So they actually enforced their doctrines on the mosques, literally. And no person was allowed to preach something that went against the Mu'tazili doctrine. So this was by law, actually. So no person was allowed to do so. People were whipped, people were paraded on donkeys, people were imprisoned. So one of the students of Imam Malik died in prison. So one of the students of Imam Malik was whipped until he died. So they literally tortured people. So and if they were alive today, right? So as like Sunni Muslims, if we see a sister who has no hijab on, by the way, so we don't condemn the sister, right? It's a sin. May Allah Subhanahu wa Taala forgive her. All of us do sins. If a Mu'tazili was alive today and he saw a sister who's not wearing a hijab, he would enforce it. And if she did not compile, he would punish her. So that is their doctrine. So it's very funny that a person says, they were liberals. Like, it's just hilarious. So the way that this comes out is the reason that they make such absurdities is because firstly, they are not read, obviously, they're Johal. But apart from that, these people think that anything that goes against orthodoxy, meaning against, let's say, Sunni basic practice, is good. So since they hate, let's say, a normal conventional way of understanding Islam, they say that anything that goes against it, it's good and liberating. But were they to live under the Mu'tazila, it's even a question if they would still be alive, right? So it's something that you should consider. In terms of the Mu'tazila, how much should we listen to people who we disagree with? And like, if a Salafi, how much Sufi should we read? So if you think, how should we like interact with people we disagree with, we should interact with them with justice. So let's say a normal person who calls himself quote unquote Salafi or Wahhabi or whatever, right? So he's a Muslim, he's your brother, right? So you owe him justice, you owe him kindness, you owe him love, you owe him rahma, you owe him mercy. All of these things are still in place. So being harsh towards him, there's no reason for you to do so. So if you disagree, then you should talk with him and you should make a dua before talking with him that if you think I'm wrong, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide me to whatever you are doing, because that's clearly the truth if I'm wrong, right? And if you're wrong, may Allah guide you to what I'm doing. So you must engage with people in humility and in kindness and in mercy and in love. For the reason to engage with people is to make sure that they're guided, right? And that is to do it on the basis of their best interests. So if you're doing it to, let's say, only gloat about how great you are, then actually such an engagement is not even allowed to begin with. So you should be very kind to them. Most of the people, like if you were in one of the Gulf nations, you would probably be inclined to that thought, because that's the thought that is preached to you all the time. So most of these people grow up with the thought, and as we already said, that most people follow the crowd, so they simply followed it. And so this is why you should not be harsh to them at all. So be kind, but in public, make sure that you tell the truth. That's it. So in public, and mostly if you're engaging with such a person, it should not be in public, right? He's your brother. If you have to give him advice, you give it in private, right? That's what you should do. That would be my advice, inshallah. So you just keep on reading. So the thing that I recommend everyone, and this works for me, is that there are two kinds of people. So the first kind of people who are extremely energetic when they wake up. I'm not those kind of people. The second kind of people are extremely energetic before they go to sleep. So the way that I usually do it, I don't do this always, but the way that I usually do it is that I read like an hour before going to sleep. So that way, even if something is really bothering me about a text, I sleep because sleep overtakes me. That way, you can avoid like overreading. That would be my advice, and just build a habit. So even 10 pages a day is good. So even 10 pages. So 10 pages takes like what, 10 minutes at maximum. So even 10 pages is good. So after a week, turn it to 15. After another week, turn it to 20. So, and also give days in which you read more. So there are some days in which I would read for like 6 hours straight because I want to. So it's something that I like. But in days that I'm not feeling about it, I do not enforce myself to read, because then you just skim over things you don't understand, or neither do you want to understand, right? So that is how you should do it, inshallah. Yeah, I don't believe in meta reading. Just read. No, do not take advices on how to read. Just read. And so every person is a bit different in how they read. So some people love to make notes, some people love to write when they're reading, right? Some people love to do neither of that. Some people are extremely easy for them to memorize stuff. So for me, it's actually the opposite. That if I read a book, I most likely forget. If there's nothing like worth remembering about it, I would forget the contents of the book in a week. So if something is very good about it, then I remember it. So, but for some people, if they read a book, they remember it. So, like for the rest of their lives. I don't know where these people live, but I would like to live over there because I don't remember anything. So, well, you should. So, for example, if you want to read a kalam, let's say you want to read the disputes and all of that, you don't start with this book, right? So, you don't start with the incoherence of the philosophers. Or let's say you want to read about Sufism, right? So, you do not start with the, well, where it's supposed to be over here somewhere. Yeah. So, you do not. So, you do not start with this book, right? So you always start with basics. So you want to read about Sufism, you start with Ayyuh al-Walad, right? You want to read about Kalam, you start with Kharid al-Bahiyya. You want to read about exegesis, there's a book by Farhan Zubairi, I believe his name is. It's called The Basics of the Tafsir, something like this, or Introduction to Quran Sciences, actually. That's what it's called. So you start by that. So he also has a book on Introduction to Hadith Sciences. So you start by that. So you should know your competence and you should know your level of understanding. So you start by basic books, you slowly build them up, right? And then you refer to different authors to make sure that you're getting a holistic understanding. So another thing that is bad is that you only stick to one author. So even though I only talk about Imam Ghazali over here because I believe that Imam Ghazali is great for practical religion, right? Right. So, but I don't read only him, right? So I've read numerous Sufis. So this is why I've done like a documentary on Imam al Junaid. This is why I'm learned on Akbari, let's say, metaphysics. This is why I've done a documentary on Shams Tabrizi. You do not limit yourself to one thinker. So if the only Sufism you know is of Imam al Ghazali, then you don't know Sufism, right? Because it existed before Ghazali and existed after Ghazali. The same thing is true with Kalam. If you only know the Kalam of Imam Taftazani, then you don't know Kalam. So you need to read different authors and you need to read them at your level. So let's say Imam al-Ghazali's Al-Iqtisad is at a certain level, you can read different authors at that level. Right, so you can Johara Tawheed, you can read the Sanusi Creed, you can read many of mostly like the Mutakallimin who have written their books fall in this level. But if you want to advance, then you have to go higher. So a book that is a bit more, let's say, complex than Imam Ghazali's book is Al-Irshad by Imam al-Juwaini, who is his teacher. Then if you want to go higher than that, you read Imam Nasafi's book, right? And then you read its Shar by Imam Taftazani. So Sharul Aqidah Nasafiya by Imam Taftazani. If you want to go higher than that, then you read what's it called? The works of Imam Razi. If you want to go higher than that, then you read the works of Imam Davani, Imam Jurjani, and so on and so forth. So you also read the Maqasid of Imam Taftazani. That's a higher level work, and so that's how you do it. So step by step. So have I? Yeah, I've read Shah Waliullah, but not a lot. So I've read Shah Waliullah to some extent. If you look behind me, right over there where my finger is, there's a book about Shah Waliullah. So I actually don't want to disturb my rack, if you guys don't mind, right? Because I have to pull that out. It's at the bottom. So it's a book about Shah Waliullah. So I've read about Shah Waliullah. Now, he was a Hanafi. He was not a Shafi. So he had a lot of influence from Shafis, but he was not a Shafi. He was an Ashri, but he was not a Shafi. So he was a Hanafi, but he has a lot of Shafi influence in him. So there was a time in his life where he considered becoming a Shafi, but he didn't. He remained a Hanafi. So, but he's a great alim. And yes, I have read Shams al Ma'arif actually with the. So yes, I've read it. And in terms of Yeah, I'm actually pretty familiar with the works of Sheikh Al Akbar ibn Arabi. So I've read his Fasus, I've read his Fatuhat. So I wouldn't say I've read a lot of his works, but I've read a lot about him and some of his works. So I actually have like a translation of the Fatuhat. So if you see behind you, these last two books, they are like a translation of Fatuhat. It's not an entire translation because I do not believe the entire one is translated, but parts of it are. So I think it's like 30-40% of the Fatuhat that has been translated over here. And so I've read it, and I've obviously read the works of some of his students. I've read the works of some of the modern Akbarians, so like Sheikh Al-Atas, for example, and I've read the works of the people against the Akbarians, like Imam Taftizaini, Mustafa Sabri, example, and so on and so forth. So I'm quite familiar with Ibn Arabi. So I've also read the works of Adzutsu on this, and the works of Hussain Nasr on this, the work of William C. Shitek on this, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert or something, but I am well read on him, or so I hope, or I think actually. So the most intelligent scholar that I've personally interacted with is Sheikh Shams Tamiz. So I actually have a podcast with him. You can find it if you scroll down enough on my channel. So I've actually done a couple of classes, so a couple of courses from Sheikh Shams Tamiz, and we did a Twitter space that then I recorded and I put on YouTube. So you can see my conversation with the Sheikh if you go down enough the in my channel. So there are other shayukh I know. There's a Khairabadi sheikh who I've learned some things from. I'm not like a formal student of him, but he has given us a few lessons and he answers our questions. He's always available. So in Kalam, I do have shayukh. So I do not have shayukh in other things, but in Kalam, so I'm not a formal student, but I have recourse to like ulama. Uh-huh. Sher Shah, if you're watching, please take notes of this. This is not something I'm saying. But actually, let me send it to him. So he should understand what Islamic aesthetics are. I tell him all the time, like, yani, bro, you need to learn from me. You know, by not learning from me, you're doing yourself a detriment, right? I have a far more aesthetically appealing bookshelf than Sher Shah. And Sher Shah should take lessons, right? He should give me bait and he should say, yeah, you're my sheikh from today onward. No, I'm just kidding. He has good aesthetics. Like I believe that his camera setup is actually better than mine. And he also has that big mic. Like, I don't have a mic, so yeah. So, guys, if there are not any more questions, I would be taking my leave. You guys should leave as well. Today is a odd night of the last 10 days. So, spend it in worship, not asking questions, inshallah. That would be better for you and better for me as well. And so, with that, inshallah, I'll see you guys next week. So, next week, is there any question? I think that the answer to this is very easy, isn't it? Like, I would obviously want to meet Imam al Ghazali. So if there is only one scholar that I could meet from history, it would be Imam Ghazali, without a doubt. Like, bila shak, Imam al-Ghazali. Yes. So if after Imam al-Ghazali, I think that's a bit too obvious. So after him, if there's someone I would meet, it would be either like Imam Shafi, and if not Imam Shafi, then I would definitely love to meet Imam Malik. If not Imam Malik, then I would definitely love to meet uh, Imam Rabbani, so Ahmed Sarhindi. If not him, then Imam Razi. So that's usually how I would classify it. Yeah. Yes, Arabic is quintessential if you want to become a student of Islam. It's a non-negotiable point. You have to learn it. If you want to become a proper student of Islam, if you just want to be a reader, then it's not really necessary. But if you want to like learn Islam properly, then there is no doubt whatsoever. You have to learn Arabic, especially Quranic Arabic. Quran is the foundation. Everything stems from it. As Imam Ghazali says, the Quran is the sun. Everything else are different rays, weak rays, compared to the knowledge of the Quran. So but you haven't actually seen my Punjabi yet. My Punjabi is fluent too, man. You underestimate me. I also like I'm not fluent in Farsi, but I speak Farsi, so I'm good in Farsi as well. You guys take me light, bro. Like, come on, man. But anyways, guys, it was fun talking to you all. So 2 days, two live streams in a day. I'm a bit tired as well, so I'm gonna take my leave now, inshallah ta'ala. So next week, Thursday, 10 p.m. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So next week, 10 p.m., we're gonna continue. I think we're gonna cover the Quran. So Imam al-Ghazali's exposition upon the reading, the recitation of the Quran as well, and I think that's a beautiful chapter, and so I think that we will definitely cover that. But until then, take care, be safe, especially if you're in like Middle East or in Iran. Stay safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and your family, and stay safe and stay faithful. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It was a pleasure as always.